Hello and welcome to the Car Care Nut live stream. How you guys doing? Hope everybody's enjoying their Saturday. I don't know if you're working or not. I'm not, so that's good. So guys, I want to share with you a few things before we start. The channel recently crossed 100,000 subscribers. Can you guys believe that? I still can't. I'm so appreciative of all your love and support. I really appreciate you guys' support. And we are going to have a proper celebration. I am waiting for one thing to happen before I film a video and release that dedicated video for that, where I will, as I promised you, will share some details about myself, my story, where I come from, how I became a Toyota technician. But having said that, we will have a few DIY videos coming up here, and one video that might spark your interest mixed in between that. But enough talking about this stuff. Let's get it along with the live stream. So I did actually, before we start, I did notice that sometimes some of you put a question before the live stream starts, like even when I first announce it, and for some reason it disappears. And I noticed one of those questions, and if I miss others, that's the only one I saw, so I will cover that. Mike H says, assuming the Camry and Highlander were your top choices, with what new mainstream sedan and three-row SUV would you rank second in terms of reliability and overall impression of the car? You know, for third-row SUVs, if you're looking for a basic, very basic, bare-bone truck, big, comfortable truck, the Sequoia. Very understated. Usually people are not very kind to Sequoia because it's ancient, but it's actually a great truck, other than the rust kind of taking a toll on it because it's old. It hasn't really been updated to cope with the rust stuff. Highlander is great. Otherwise, your third row, the SUVs with third row seat, those two, I wouldn't rank them first and second. One of them is a truck, where it's more off-roading and all that. You can do some off-roading with the Sequoia, of course. Not the greatest as a 4Runner, but the Highlander is probably your king for family, for convenience, for everything else. Having answered that only one question that I caught before the live stream started, let's start. So Jason Montejano, sorry if I don't read your name right, I'm trying. Our generation, the second generation Prius transactional failures rather common. They are not. I don't really see a lot of failures in those. If there's any model that I put as I've seen more failures than others, still doesn't make it common, but I've seen them more than other hybrid models, would be the first generation Camry. So that's your 07 to 2011 Camry. I've seen quite a few fail, and they have an internal short and they fail. Now, again, I don't know if these were maintained, if they were abused, if there's modifications, but I've seen quite a few of those, not recently, scattered across their lifetime, if you would, that generation Camry. But I don't recall the last time a second generation Prius transmission failed just because it either had 400,000 or 500,000 miles, it was an accident, something was modified, something got messed up that caused the failure. But as far as just commonly failing just like that, not really. I haven't seen that yet. So the Kid DC 2012 Camry SE 2A RFE, best car I've ever owned. Yeah, I've actually owned a 2012 Camry. That was my previous car. Unfortunately, it got totaled in an accident. But yeah, it is a good car. So Lexus Man, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much. I still can't believe this channel has 100,000 subscribers. It brings joy to my heart. Now, I was going to say this is a video, but I have to say it now. I really don't care about the numbers and the status and all this mess, but it brings joy to my heart that there's a chance that I have potentially helped 100,000 people. That is more than I ever thought a little bit over a year ago that I would have the privilege of doing that. So thank you guys for watching, and I'm glad to help, and I wish we can continue at this pace for the sake of helping and sharing everything I know. So Jason Dagnan says, can Toyota Camry hybrid batteries last 300,000 miles if well taken care of? Yes, they can. And this is true with all hybrids. I have seen it myself, but I've also seen batteries fail way earlier than that. And usually because of a clogged fan, because the thing just sits and sits for months at a time and it's never driven. the same case with any battery, not just hybrid batteries, 12-volt batteries, any battery for that sense. You leave it just not used for a very long time repeatedly, it's going to fail eventually. But if you're using it and you're taking care of it, not letting it overheat, realistically, you could see 300,000 miles. Not, I wouldn't be surprised if you do, because I see them a lot. Actually, recently, and this will be later in another video, I'll talk about this one Prius. We recently had a Prius that has 400,000 miles. I think it was the 15 Prius. Now, it did come in with a blown engine and blown transmission. For more on that when we get to it in the video, but it was the original battery. I was actually shocked that it was the original battery. This thing had had service history from day one, so it hasn't had a battery replacement. So Mark says, I appreciate the info on bleeding the coolant on the 3.5. I have the same funnel too. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching, Mark. I really appreciate it. So Real World Garage, thank you so much, sir. I really appreciate it. By the way, folks, Real World Garage is a mechanic as well. He has a YouTube channel. You guys might be interested in some of the old school stuff that he does. Very interesting man. I really appreciate you tuning in, sir. So running at altitude, ready to buy a 2021 Camry and deciding hybrid versus gas. I keep my cars for at least 10 years and wondering cost of maintenance if I should go hybrid or gas. So honestly, hybrid and gas, the maintenance wise, that is not my typical worry about them, because other than the additional cooling system, which really doesn't cost a fortune to maintain per se, maintenance wise, they're very similar. Yeah, you have to deal with the hybrid fan filter, which on that 2021 Camry hybrid is super simple to do. You could do it yourself, and cost, even if you pay, it's not a big deal to do. The only thing that scares most people, and I can understand why, is the battery. But hear me out here. If you own this car for 15 years, let's say you put 200,000 miles in those 15 years, and then the battery fails, well, at that point, you get rid of it and you move on. I think you got your money's worth. I mean, you wouldn't be up. I don't think people will be upset in 15 years and 250,000 miles if, let's say, your engine has a major catastrophe and it needs major work, or the transmission lets go. I mean, at some point, something's got to give. Even if it's a Toyota, they're very well made cars, but in the end, it's a machine. Something's going to give at some point. So that's your thought process. However, hybrids have come a long way. They're really good these days in reliability. But the main thing is, before you decide, since you've never owned a hybrid before, you gotta drive one. Many people, I see so many people regret buying a hybrid because, oh, I don't like the way they drive. I don't like the way the engine shuts off. I don't like the way the noises they make. I don't like the weird feeling of the brake pedal sometimes when you're at slow speeds, when it switches from regen to regular. So you gotta drive it. Make sure you like how that drivetrain is. If you like it, I think it's a good option. If you don't like it, then go with the gas model, of course. Otherwise, it's the same engine as a four-cylinder Camry, minor changes, but for the most part, it's the same. The car otherwise is exactly the same. Size, everything else is exactly the same. So Jerry Mock, thank you so much for your super chat, sir. 2021 4Runner TRD, will it cause binding if I take it through corners on dry pavement on 4 high as per your recommendation? So yes, it is going to cause binding. That particular model does not have some kind of a limited slip in between. So you are going to have the binding when you turn. You do want to try to drive it forward as much as possible. You're going to make slight turns. It's going to bind slightly, and that's okay. But try to avoid sharp turns at very low speeds. You want to avoid them as much as possible. Yes, engage the 4 high, drive it around. Try to make it on like when you're driving on a straight road, put it in 4 high, drive. If you get to a little curve in the road, that's fine. But try not to do like 3-point turns within it in 4 high on dry pavement, because that actually puts a lot of stress on the drivetrain. But otherwise, you're good to go on dry pavement as long as you're driving mostly straight. So let's see here. Andrew Will. I have a 2011 Tacoma with an i4 engine. I hear ticking coming from the blower motor. I cleaned it and replaced the air filter. Any fix for this common issue? Yes. Actually, this is super common on these. The blower motor, it just goes out, starts making noise. If it really bothers you, change it. But here's what some people have done where, yeah, it makes noise. I'm not worried. You have some time. Eventually, it's going to start making such a loud noise. Then I would replace it. If it bothers you, replace it. It's super simple to replace. Literally three screws, and there are 8mm screws, or you can use a Torx if you want. Super easy to get to. Just right underneath the passenger side, under the dash. You just lean in, you'll see it. One connector, 3 screws, comes right out. Not super expensive. I wouldn't buy aftermarket. Buy an original, shop around for prices, because the original was updated on these. Well, God, I haven't seen one of these in a while. But yes, that is a very common problem with these. Just replace the blower motor and you're good. So Winston Jong says, 2007 RAV4 V6. My back is still hurting. I just did a head gasket on one of these. That was not fun. Delay in drive movement in the morning when driving off, about 10-20 seconds. Reverse okay. After that, all good. Replace ATF filter and WS fluid. Please advise no false storage. So if you have no codes, you have that massive delay in the morning. Unfortunately, that has to do with something mechanical. A valve not moving, sticking, and it takes a while for it to move, or low pressure. This thing is going to need some diagnosis when it's cold. Basically, check pressure, see what's causing it to have that delay. It's not electronic because you don't have codes. Then it's something mechanical. You did the right thing by replacing the fluid. One thing I will tell you, though, instead of spending a small fortune to do all this diagnosis and possibly take the trans apart and do all this, why don't you consider investing in a remote start? Especially if you don't park it inside of a garage, remote start and let it run for 10 minutes. Problem solved. You won't have the delay, because you really are not going to damage things as long as you don't continue to basically push the gas when it's delaying. That might be a solution. I don't know how many miles this thing have, what kind of condition it's in, but that's something I encourage you to do, because getting into transmission repair is going to be a big repair. You might have to drop the valve body, see what's sticking, maybe replace stuff. Maybe that's not even it. Maybe there's a clog somewhere. And as you drive it more with that new fluid, the new fluid could clean things out where things get better. So try that before you go spending money on chasing this repair, or worse, replacing a transmission because of that. That's definitely not worth it. Please don't spend a lot of money. The car drives fine. If it's 20 seconds in the morning, that's okay. Better than just spending a fortune on a new trans. So Noah Scott, thank you so much, sir, for 100,000 subscribers. So Scion TC 2012, you took your Scion TC to get a wheel alignment and they couldn't adjust the rear. They said it was stuck. How do I replace it if it's stuck? Blowtorch. Here is where I'm guessing this is a rust belt car, or at some point it was exposed to rust. That's welcome to the world of working on Toyotas in the rust. That is very common. And that arm, in order to replace it, it's seized. You're literally going to have to chop it off. And the best way to do this, and I say the best way, it's still not very simple and not easy. It takes a lot of patience. It's going to tear up your arm. That's why most mechanics have tennis elbow. You're going to take a saw, an electric saw with a really good blade, and you're going to go right in between. This is the subframe. This is the bushing where that arm is. You're going to go right in between the two. You're trying to cut the bolt straight on both sides, then the arm will come out. You're going to have to replace the control arm, the bolts, eccentrics, everything. Some people will use a torch. I don't encourage the torch method because I've seen way too many people go too torch happy with this, basically trying to melt the bolt, and then they end up melting the subframe, and now you're stuck. You need a new subframe. So cut it off. That's the best thing I would do, because any other way, you're just going to keep hammering. And the reason you're going to mess up your arm, so I'd be careful, because you're going to be there with that saw for a long time, vibrating your arm like this. And something that I have and most technicians have, it's called tennis elbow. That's just from vibration and doing this. So be careful with that. Don't try not to get hurt as much as possible. Shane, good to see you, man. I haven't seen you in a long time. Shay Sundet is an OG subscriber, as some of us they used to call each other the OG subscribers. So, can you describe the correct dealer procedure to change the transmission fluid, getting conflicting information from service writers at the dealership, and would like to know how they should be doing it? So, I have a video on how to do the transmission fluid, but that's more DIY. Let's talk about the dealership for a bit. Car comes in. Most cars come in at full operating temperature. We're nowhere near close. Oh, and I see here 2016 Tundra. Okay. On a Tundra, things are a little bit different, but let's talk about general for all of them. So this would be beneficial to everybody, and I'll give you the notes on the Tundra. So car comes in, it says fully operating temperature. I can let the car sit overnight for a simple transmission fluid. Toyota developed a tool that it goes where that overflow tube is, and you have a chart. If you have this model with this operating temperature, this is how much you set the tool. Basically, what the tool will do is it'll change the height it'll send another tube inside and change the height of that overflow tube. So now you can actually check the transmission fluid at operating temperature. Pretty cool tool, very expensive tool, of course. And that's what we use. Now, if we're doing a flush, in a Tundra, for example, or in the other models, just as soon as we get the car in, take the line, hook up the machine, flush the thing. And then when it's done, we just check the transmission fluid level, top it off as needed, put the tool back, life's good. If we're doing a drain and fill, it's also very simple. I usually drain them in a container. Just take the drain plug, take the overflow tube, fluid comes down, measure how much, just to get us close, add the same fluid. And there's actually a tool, another special tool from Toyota. It's just a big jug that is marked, and it has a a pneumatic pump that pumps the fluid up. And that hose that goes from this tool actually threads onto the fill hole. I'm actually interested in buying one for my home garage because I do so many transmissions there. Time to get one of those because it's really nice. So add the fluid, start the car, put our tool, check the temperature. And usually we might sometimes, believe it or not, in a drain and fill, have to wait for the car to get the operating temperature. Takes a few minutes, not really, warm up really quick, just so we have that tool adjustment to the right temperature. Really doesn't take long at a dealership. Takes, I don't know, half hour. Worst both cases, because we have a lift, just lift it up and do the thing real quick. That tool is readily available. Actually, most dealerships will have plenty. However, this is where my brethrens fail us sometimes. You gotta check the fluid afterwards, especially after a flush. Yes, these machines are the flush. They're very expensive machines. They're usually supplied by a supplier. And some of these machines, as they get older, they become inaccurate. And they start either adding too much or taking too much. Basically, those machines, all they do is, as we take a quart from here, we add a quart here. It just becomes in line, it's exchanging the fluid. Very simple machine, but you can't count on it for accuracy. So you got to check the fluid. Takes 5 minutes. Some guys don't do it. Some guys just take the risk. And that's when things kind of go south. So I hope that gives you an idea of the procedure, Shane. So Art Vandelay says, dealer installed OEM alternator, 14 month, 3,000 miles later. Independent tech finds the cable to the battery is loose and the nut is welded to the post. Should be dealer warranty. Unfortunately, they won't, because their dealer warranty is 12 months, 12,000 miles. But if you go back to the dealership and you don't just start yelling, screaming at them, if you sit down with the manager and within reason, explain to him what happened, tell him, I understand that it's been 14 months, but I've only gone 3,000 miles. You were the last one that did this. What can you do to help me here? If you go guns blazing at him, he's just going to say, well, you're out of warranty, have a nice day. But if you go with reason, he will reason with you and he will tell you, okay, I see where you're coming from. I see how this could be our fault. So let me help here. They might try to goodwill it. They might sell you a new alternator at cost or do something. They will, but when you go guns blazing, they will not even want to help. So that's what I would do. It's an unfortunate situation, and I understand this is not ideal, but these things unfortunately do happen. But the dealership will help. If they are a good dealership, they have a good manager, you go to them and say the right things, they will help you. And that's how this works. So Nit Gondo says 2021 Venza, when my wife makes a quick right turn, it makes a noise. Is it because of the traction control? It could, but another thing is the electric steering could also be making that noise. You do want to take, this is, I'm assuming this has very low miles and is under warranty. Film it. Folks, we all live in the digital age. Take a movie of this and show it to the dealership, the noise, and try to duplicate it with them in front of you. They could, in some cases, just tell you, oh, we'll just show you another car. They all do this. Now you know it's a normal condition. But if it's a problem, they might tell you, oh, I can't hear anything. And then we go through this back and forth. Just show them a video and make it happen in front of them and have them look. Unfortunately, this stuff I can't really tell you because I have to see the car in person. You know what I mean? So, Mark, are there any known problems with drive shafts humming at certain speeds? It's done it on 2 different sets of tires. Michelin's on it now. Let me see, which car are we talking about here? Mark, you're going to have to let me know which kind of car that is, but I'll give you a general answer for this. Oh, sorry. 2013 Highlander is the humming drive shaft issue. Drive shafts won't hum only for one case. If the center support bearing is basically faulty, it's a bearing, it can hum. But one thing I would be very careful with those, especially 13 Highlander, they are notorious for rear wheel bearings masking themselves as all kinds of other problems. Yes, I understand you hear the noise everywhere, but it's actually one of the rear wheel bearings. And the best way we found to diagnose these, have the car up in the air, especially if it's all-wheel drive. If it's not, I'll tell you what to do in a second. If it's all-wheel drive, lift the car up safely, if all 4 wheels off the ground, put it in drive, accelerate till you hear the noise inside the car. Then safely, carefully, you're going to put your hand on the coil spring in the back. Compare side to side, and that's how you're going to hear which bearing it is. If you don't, check the fronts. If you don't, the last thing I would do is check the center support bearings. Put your hand on it, but I would suspect go after the wheel bearings first. Tires, at this point, they're out of the picture, but check the rear wheel bearing. They're notorious. And if it's not all-wheel drive, just lift the rear tires off, put your hand on the spring, and spin the tire as fast as you can. You're going to hear one of them is rougher than the other side, and that's going to be your bearing. Very common. Before you go doing anything else, I would check that. So, Andrew, I did a drain of fill with my 2011 Tacoma regular cab automatic. I was tempted to remove the pan and change the filter, but heard the filter is just a screen and you need to change. Honestly, I wouldn't. Don't change the screen. This is one of those situations where I understand there is an actual small filter there, but if you change the fluid on time, I have not pulled one. Some customers insist, I want this change, and yes, sir, you're the customer, it's your money, we advised you. I pull it out, it looks exactly the same, just wet with fluid. There's no dirt, there's no debris. We actually cut a few apart. They look perfectly fine. As long as you change the fluid on time, don't worry about it. If we have a concern where the fluid's very dirty, there's abnormal debris in this transmission, then yes, replace it. But if there's no concern, I wouldn't, honestly. But if you've changed it already, there's no harm. Just as long as you've kept everything clean inside that transmission, you should be good. So, Elaine, I recently bought a 2009 Camry hybrid. Unfortunately, did not notice the coolant leak, which appears to be coming from the casting of the block. Have you heard of this? Suggestions, please. So, I would need a little bit more information about where the coolant leak is, but there are a few things that I know about that are common. It's not necessarily from the casting itself. There's a pipe on the side of the cylinder head toward like the middle of the car by the air filter in that area that is notorious to leak. If that is the one that you have, which is very common on these, please do not replace the cylinder head. That pipe actually, it's not a standard procedure. Pull the pipe out, clean everything. This needs to be done by a mechanic. It's a little bit involved. Pull that pipe out, apply sealer, and then put it back. And actually, we've had a lot of success with that. But if it is the actual casting of the cylinder head, cylinder block, I just wrote it. You wrote block. That is very interesting. I have not seen that, no. The only thing I can think of, and I've seen one case like that, the car's been in an accident so strong it actually cracked the block and nobody noticed, and you started driving. And that's, fortunately, in that case, if there is an actual leak from the block, first clean it, see how long it takes to come back. Unless it's gushing, then that's a different story. But make sure it is actually an active leak, not something else leaking, because the last thing you want is tear this engine apart to put a block or just get a used engine. Before doing that, you got to make sure, because that is not very common, or the casting itself, unless there was an accident or there's a crack from overheating, from all kinds of other stuff. So, hold on. What happened to the chat now? It jumped again. So here we go. So Linda Thomas, 2021 Corolla XSE has a 2-liter 169 dynamic force and a CVT. What has been your experience with the 2.0 dynamic force engine and CVT transmission combo driving and in the shop? So I really like this generation Corolla. I think it's a bargain because it has a lot of options standard, and it's a beautiful engine, especially that 2.0. Has plenty of power. It's a very nice package. It's a very nice price. It's a very nice car. We don't really have a lot of issues with the CVT, but again, this has only been for a couple of years. We usually start seeing the common trends, the production stuff early on. The Corolla does not have any issues. However, I will tell you one thing that is becoming very worrying about these, and don't freak out. The back doors are holding water. We've actually had a few that had somewhat of a severe rust inside the door. I mean, you just have basically a fish tank inside the door with salt sitting in it. I'm in Chicago. That might not be the case for you. But if you have one of those Corollas, so we're talking about 20 and 21 Corolla sedan, potentially the hatchback as well, 19 and up, the back doors, the rear doors, there's a plug at the bottom of the door. Take it out, see if water drains out. I mean, I'm not talking about a few drips. I'm talking about a couple big, 3 times that. That just gives you the... We're starting to see those a lot, and it's under investigation. They're not sure what's going on here. Why is it not draining? And why are the drains blocked to begin with? And why is so much water making its way inside? That's under investigation. But otherwise, these things have been really good. We don't really see a lot of issues with them. The engine's been phenomenal. We've had 1 or 2 thermostats on these, but that's affecting all of them. At least on the Corolla, more Camry, RAV4, V6 Highlander. That's the biggest one for these. But for the most part, they've been really good, and I really like that car. It drives really good, and it's a very good package. So Mr. Bluntnose says, is some play in the AC compressor pulley normal 2008 Camry V6? Potentially, but I would ask you, what is your concern? There should not be much play. I mean, if you're really pushing on that pulley, you might feel very slight, but anything that you can see with your eye wobbling, that's no good. And that should you need to look at. It might need a clutch, might be something internal in the compressor, go from there. But there should not be much play in that AC compressor pulley. So, Jose Cortez, how reliable is a 3.5 V6 engine I have in a 2017 Camry? You have a very reliable engine and a very reliable car. Honestly, the 17 Camry, I'm just trying to scan through my memory here. One of the very last cars to have that version of the 2GR FE before they switched over to direct injection in 18 for the Camry. That's a very good engine, and the Camry has always had the better version. Don't know why. They have the least problems. But take care of it and it'll take care of you. That's a very good engine and a very good car, honestly. I know you might have seen my video on the leaks, and a lot of people had concerns. Camry is one of the cars that I think out of the 400 that I said, maybe one or two has been Camrys, and most of them were Highlander and Siennas, old RAV4 V6s. That was another thing as well. But not a 17 Camry. I don't think I've ever pulled one out of a 17 Camry for anything. So Nima says, what do you think about the engine crankcase cleaning service on a 15 Camry SE? Engine crankcase cleaning service. Man, these people are getting creative with the terms of these services. Look, I'm assuming this is what they mean by that is engine oil cleaning, and that's fine. But if you do your oil changes on time, and this car have had oil changes for 5,000 miles, 6 months, I don't see a reason why you need to clean the oil. Sure, it might help a little bit, but does it justify the cost? I don't think so. And if by that service they mean induction service, where we're going to clean the intake, the valves, or this whole mess, well, if you regularly drive on the highway, or you regularly drive your car is fully warmed up and you're accelerating hard and driving at consistent speeds, you're really not going to benefit much from this service. But if you have repeated short trips, if you have questionable service history, maybe from a previous owner, if you bought this used, then yes, these services might help. But if you don't have any concerns, in the oil cleaning, I usually recommend it when you have slight oil consumption. If you don't have that, why are you worried? Just continue good maintenance and call it a day. I wouldn't start investing in services that you really don't need. So Ray Jackson, I had a trans flush at a dealership at 72,000 miles. When should I get another one, and should it be a drain or drainer fill or a flush? So at 72,000 miles, I would look, if this is a WS car, sorry, I don't think you wrote the model, but that's okay, I'll give you both. If you have a WS fluid car, I try to do this again at 120. I know you're a little bit over, slightly over, it's not a big deal, don't worry, but try to get the other one at around 120. Flush or drain and fill is okay, as long as the flush is done right. Both are good. In your case, at 120, follow it up again. Try not to make it over 12 years on the age of the car. You wrote 2013. I'm assuming this is a 2013. So your car is 8 years old, give or take. So when you get to 12 years, when the car is 12 years old, try to get a transmission fluid replaced as well. Don't wait till that 120. I don't know how much you drive. That might be different. Rob G, happy 4th. Guys, I was going to say this at the end, but happy 4th of July to everybody, US and Canada for different reasons, but nonetheless, happy 4th of July. Carlos Marquez, that's a very interesting question. I like that, Carlos. You're planning to quit your job for YouTube. We're actually talking about this, folks. No, because I like what I do. I love working at the dealership. There are times where I hate it and I wish I don't, but most of the time I enjoy working on cars. I love what I do. YouTube is definitely a big factor. However, some plans in the future might come, but I don't plan on sitting on a bench and not wrenching for a living anytime soon. Maybe when I retire, ions from now, I don't know. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it, but I do not plan to stop on working on cars, because if I don't work on cars, I can't help you, because I can't actually give you experience and tell you real world stuff from what I see every single day working on cars. So I don't plan it. Maybe one day I'll leave the dealership, open my own business, go to another dealership. I don't know, but I'm not planning to stop working on cars for YouTube because this is a car channel. If we don't work on cars, why are you watching and listening to me, I suppose? So Zig 8100, 2013 Camry V6 XLE, 114,000 miles, bought used. Maintenance advice, please. I haven't done any major maintenance. Is it too late to do a transmission flush? Plus, how reliable is the engine and trans combination? That's a very good car. I was going to say the four-cylinder on those, if it was not maintained and not maintained well, they could burn oil. But in your case, that V6 is good. Coming up here for you soon at 120,000 miles is going to be your spark plugs. That's the first maintenance. See if the coolant's been done. If it's not, replace it. That's small stuff. Filters, do get an oil change. As far as the transmission, you're not too late, but just get it drain and fill. You're a little bit further than where I feel comfortable with a flush. I just want you to know that. Just drain and fill, call it a day on the transmission. So, Rob G, thank you. By the way, got a new haircut. It actually happened today. Thank you, Mrs. Car Care. Not she cuts my hair because I work becoming a workaholic here a little bit. 80, 90 hours between my full-time job and doing YouTube. It's been interesting. So thank you, Mrs. Car Care, not only for cutting my hair, but for everything you do. She does so much for this channel. You guys just have no idea. So big thanks to Mrs. Car Care for putting up with me and helping me do everything that I do. So on Bronx Task Force, on a Lexus IS 350 engine, where is the most common area where carbon buildup occurs? So on the intake valves, on the ones that are actually affected, not all of them are affected. There's a specific year range. I don't remember this right at the top of my head. But the ones that are affected, the carbon buildup on the valves, on the intake valves, and those are pretty bad. They get pretty bad, unfortunately. But that's where it builds up, and then eventually it gets to a point where a valve doesn't close all the way. It starts to miss fires, and you have basically a leak on the combustion chamber. It doesn't seal right, and that's where the problems start. They can be fixed, but if you start seeing problems, I would get it fixed. Don't just wait for it to get really bad. Because at some point, you could go to the point of no return where we need major repair, but it is possible to fix them without replacing anything major. So, Jay Sunbrain says, Tacoma or Tundra? Very hard question. Personally, Tundra. The only thing I have against the Tacoma is, personally, again, I think the Tundra drives better than the Tacoma. I like big cars. That's just how I am. But they're both really good. I mean, I don't think you can go wrong with either. Go with the one you like because they're both good. What year 4Runner should I buy? This one is very simple. If you can find one that doesn't have rust, any year. Really, they're all good. Best ones, in my opinion, are the latest ones. That's just my humble opinion, 2010 all the way to 2021, if you can find one. Unfortunately, they've become a relic now where you can't really find one at all. But the previous generations, if they're rust-free and been taken care of, they're also very good. Going all the way back to 90s even, they've always been good, but rust kills these. Be very careful. So, Cypher the Penguin. Sorry if I wrote that, if I misspelled that. Why would a Tacoma have a burned clutch smell going up a hill, even in the proper gear, no AC, and no lugging? I'm wondering what year, a little bit of details, guys, when you ask the questions, because is this a manual transmission? I'm assuming it is a manual transmission because of your description. It could be the clutch is slipping, could be old. You want to check the clutch life to begin with before anything else. Because if you have burning smell, the clutch is slipping. Now, when you're accelerating hard going up a hill, if it's an old clutch, that tremendous load might make it slip a little bit, but you need to check that clutch. Inspection plate, look at the clutch and see what's going on with it, especially if this is an older one. If this is a brand new Tacoma, that might be normal. Give it a few weeks and it'll go away. But if it's, let's say, 6 months old all the way to 5 years old, let's put this number with less than 100,000 miles, get that cloth checked. So James, recommended tire type if towing a lot with a 2019 RAV4 was told XL tires better. So here's the thing, James. You can't really tow a lot. We're not talking mega towing here, 5, 6, 7,000 pounds. 19 RAV4, best case scenario, 3,500 pounds. So you're not doing extreme towing with it. But XL tires are good if you're loading the car itself. Towing doesn't exactly load the car weight-wise. It loads the car pulling-wise. The one thing I would consider with the XL tires, if you're going to be, instead of, let me rephrase this. Instead of going with XL tires, look for tires that have better braking distance, because most people are, and I have to say this, I'm sorry, I'm going to derail from this for a second. Most people are so concerned about, oh, my towing capacity, my hitch, and my this and that. You know what the biggest problem with towing is? Braking. That's the biggest problem with towing. Yes, it'll put wear on the transmission. Yes, it'll overload everything taking off. But once you're moving, there's not much different load. It's very similar because now everything is in motion. Braking is where things become disastrous or great. Be very careful with brakes when you tow. That's general advice for everybody. But if anything, I would look after tires that have good braking, let's say, resistance, or a good braking tire. Tires do have an effect on braking. And the other thing is, I would not upgrade the tires just for towing. Because remember, if you're within the towing capacity that the car was rated for, it was rated for that towing capacity with the OEM tires. You don't need to upgrade from those tires to have a safe drive. However, if you want to improve things a little bit, look for tires that did a braking test well, because that's actually going to help you the most. So, Chris Rowe, hello from Australia. Man, that is far away from me. You probably think the same way. Thank you so much for watching, Chris. JJFF. If I use one of those public chargers at like a Whole Foods for my plug-in hybrid, can it possibly damage the charging system? No, it really cannot. Most of these have million protection in place. It's only going to supply the power that the onboard charger will be able to take. So feel free to use them. They shouldn't be an issue at all. So Logan Miller, I've got a 2016 Camry that shifts rough when cold, 68,000 miles. Is this normal? It's not normal. However, it's not an issue either. Here's what you could do to improve this. Go to your dealership, have them reset the transmission memory, and then, I don't know if you're DIY or not, the transmission fluid needs to be checked. That is could be either or, but that's a classic scenario of a low transmission fluid. Yes, it could be from the factory sometimes, believe it or not, depends how cold it gets, but do check the transmission fluid level and then reset the memory, and that should take care of it. Super common on these. For some reason, the memory reset resolves it, and everything will be good. So Lego 4, second generation Prius, no heat in wintertime. Seems to be bled properly and new thermostat, but I can't get the coolant above 150 degrees in the winter. You need to diagnose the coolant circuit as a gasoline car. This is where things kind of get interesting. You need to look at the cooling system. Is the water pumps mechanical on these? So things are a little simpler. Yes, they do have that crazy heat storage tank, but you got a flow problem. You need to distinguish, is this, sorry, let me rephrase that. You need to distinguish, is this a flow problem or is this a inside the car problem, the HVAC? Because you could very well have a servo door that's not working and everything else is, and you're chasing after coolant. You did say, however, sorry, I'm reading this again. You did say that you cannot get the coolant over 150. So that might put our theory in the servos on hold for a bit. Thermostat, coolant flow. You want to actually check the temperature, the actual temperature at the hoses themselves. One thing about that Prius that is notorious, I don't know if you checked for codes, there is a flow valve, a coolant flow valve in the, like right below the inverter. It's kind of a little bit tough to get to, but that flow valve is notorious to seize and not work anymore. So if you have any codes, check for TSBs, because these cars will have TSBs on that one flow valve. And if you don't, if you have any codes, still check it that it's flowing the coolant in the right direction. So Cody Casey, I have a 2006 two-wheel drive 4Runner and a 2009 two-wheel drive Tacoma double cab, both with the 4.0 V6. 2006 and 2006, you're right, never mind. 2006, 2009, I thought it was 16. The 4Runner is older, has more miles, but much better acceleration than the Tacoma. Is this a problem with the Tacoma? Not really, but it's really hard for me to tell just by sitting here. But maintenance. We go back to the same thing. They should have a very similar engine. They're actually exactly the same. One thing I would think is, how was the maintenance on these two? Did one of them just sit? You mentioned that the 4Runner has a lot more miles. Did one of them sit a lot and the other one was driven more regularly? Like they are similar age generation. Yes, they do have a 3-year difference, but I don't remember right off the top of my head if the Tacoma has a different transmission, because you have two-wheel drives. I don't remember the last time I've seen a two-wheel drive 4Runner at Tacoma, but it might be the transmission. Don't quote me on this, because there was the earlier 4Runners, and I don't know if this applies to the two-wheel drive, but the earlier 4Runners had a different transmission. At some point, they changed, and that might be your change right there. So check the maintenance. As far as you checking things, maintenance, spark plugs, both of these cars have 30,000-mile spark plugs, and it's not a surprise to me when I see people go 120 on the 30,000-mile spark plugs. So that's one thing I would check. I'm not too concerned because they are not exactly the same drivetrains. For example, FJ Cruiser is another one. It has exactly the same drivetrain, but it's not. The FJ Cruiser takes premium gas while it's the same engine. So just because physically they look the same doesn't mean they're actually exactly the same, because there's a programming that could be different. This is a pickup. This is an SUV. See what I'm going with that? Don't dig too much into this unless you have an actual issue or you have misfires. You're really the function of the car. You feel like it used to be good, now it's dropping. Then I would be concerned. But don't compare 4Runner to Tacoma just like that. I'm actually going to look into that transmission, because I'm not sure about two-wheel drives. I'm in Chicago. Everything is 4-wheel drive. Would be nice to have 6-wheel drive sometimes. That would help. So Thomas Garcia, just curious, what cars are in your personal garage? Yours and your wife's kids. Okay. Y'all know that I had a 12 Camry that got totaled in an accident, and I was cheap. So I bought a $300 hunk of crap, and that thing is gone. Thank God. I'm saved by that. That was a total disaster. Right now, I am in the process of shopping, and y'all need to know that it is extremely difficult for me to buy a car, because I just keep jumping left and right. I'm a car guy after all, and I keep jumping. I want this. No, I don't like this. I'm very picky with cars. So right now, I went from, maybe I want an Avalon, but then no. Maybe I want a RAV4 Prime, but then no. So now I'm waiting for the new Tundra. Let's see how that looks like. I have an idea of how things are going to be, but I want to actually see it in person, and I'm definitely not buying a car right now in this crazy climate. I'm sorry for anybody who wants to buy a car right now, but that's unfortunate that we have this chip shortage and things are not great right now. But I currently am driving an S550, which is actually my dream car. That never intended to drive it every single day, but because of my accident with the Camry, I have to drive it every single day. And for lack of a better word, it's a beautiful disaster. That's just the best way to put it. Not a great idea. And per request of Mrs. Car Care, she does not want me to share what kind of car she drives. Well, I'll leave that one hanging there. We'll get to that one day. She just doesn't feel comfortable sharing her personal car on the internet. So I'll respect that for her. So Chris Gilks, 95,000 miles on a 2016 LE four-cylinder Camry. Should I change the transmission fluid? Yes, I think you're within the range. That's a good range. I would go with a drain and fill if you really want to play it safe, although you're still within that window of a flush might be okay as well, because the car is not too old. So James, how reliable do you expect the redesigned Tundra twin-turbo engine to be? Very good question. You know what? I don't see as much brand new Lexuses. We see them as they're 3 years old at the Toyota side. But the LS500 has an innocent looking, actually not innocent, it looks like a very complicated 3.5 liter twin turbo V6. That's the exact engine you're going to find in the Tundra. I am not saying this officially, but that's going to be the engine. Sorry to say that, Toyota, but that's going to be the engine. It's nice. When the dynamic force engine came out, everybody freaked out about it, and they did not like the complication. Well, the V6, the dynamic force engine, the A25A, the 2.5 liter, the new one came in 18 Camry and up. Now it's in every single model. That engine is essentially the same as the new Tundra engine, just the Tundra engine is a V6. That's a four-cylinder. Everything is the same. Dual direct and port injection, has the same thermal efficiency that is very high and very impressive. Plastic valve covers, has twin turbos, that's the only addition to it. And really everything else, electric water pump power might change, but electric water pump, the whole very similar design internally. So it's a good engine, but we'll see. I'm a firm believer that turbos eventually will fail. You're not going to go 400,000 miles on a turbo and everything is nice and shiny, even with Toyota. But let's see what they do to really push us closer to that high miles, high age without having to replace things. So, Anthony, do you know of any good remote starters for my 2014 Camry? It has the mechanical key. I loved your videos on Toyota keys. Thank you, Anthony, for watching my video. So honestly, I wouldn't call myself an expert on remote starts, aftermarket especially. I really don't deal with them a lot, but I am trying to remember the name of the company that we always have our installer installed. I drew a blank on this one. I unfortunately cannot remember it, but Viper? No, Viper is another one, but Viper is a good one, actually. Really more important than the brand of remote start is the installer. And usually professional installers, they will deal with certain brands they've been dealing with for years and years, and they know what they're doing with that brand, and they know how reliable it is, and they will stand behind that brand because they have actual experience with it. So I would chase after the installer more than the actual brand of the remote start. Some of these newer stuff, and your car might not be one of those, but some of the newer cars, they're having remote starts that are basically an original remote start modified to fit any model. Those are really good, but more important than the brand is the installer. Fortunately, that will depend on your area, but ask around dealerships first. They're going to be the most expensive, but maybe somebody will slip and say the name of the company. No dealership have in-house remote start installation for the aftermarket stuff, so maybe they will slip and tell you their supplier. Then you can go to that supplier outside and get a cheaper price, but shop around and ask for reviews and referrals and stuff, especially when it's independent contractors that just one guy shows up at your house and installs it. Ask for referrals because you do not want a bad installer to install your remote starts. So, anything fix? I keep getting a PO138. I changed the oxygen sensor with a Bosch, no exhaust leaks, and wiring seems good. The 138 code, you didn't include the car. Trying to see, you did not. AF sensor. So every car will have two O2 sensors. actually one O2 sensor, one AF sensor. You can watch my video on how O2 sensors work. The air fuel ratio sensor, bank 1 sensor 1, that's the sensor that actually throws the second one. I know that code is for bank 1 sensor 2, but you want to replace bank 1 sensor 1. Do not use Bosch. Bosch is not the supplier for Toyota. Yes, they might be good and all that good stuff, but Toyota uses Denso. So Bosch is not very compatible with Toyota stuff. I would use the Denso, or better, use an OEM one. These are sensors you don't want, especially in that car that has a 138. You're just going to keep going to that code over and over and over. It's an AF sensor. If you've already replaced that, then you need to replace the second sensor and potentially get an OEM one. There is a TSB out there for diagnosis on that. You need to do some digging or go to techinfo.toyota.com to find that. I'm going to write that website one more time for everybody. That is the official repair manual in the United States. You can buy access to it, get the TSB, and do the diagnosis per the TSB. They give you a lot of tips. It's not a specific TSB, but it will give you tips on how to diagnose that code. Very simple, really. Most of the time, it's the AF sensors. You just have to check the readings. So multi-Miller 100. Why does the RAV4 have vibration on D and R gear? The engine cushions look good. Tell me what else I can check. So they look good is not a very, and I'm sorry to say this, but they look good is not an indication. You want to isolate your vibration, especially when it's one of those vibrations in drive or reverse. Some of the, and you did not list the year of the RAV4, they're all really very similar. The mounts on the side and in the back, it's very hard to see if they're causing that vibration or not. So you really want to start, unfortunately, replacing some of these mounts and see. The other thing I would do before you do that is clean the throttle body. I've seen so many cars, especially lately, where for some reason we've been getting a lot of these vibration in drive because of a throttle body that is dirty. So clean that first before that takes 5 minutes, and it's not a big deal, doesn't cost anything. Clean that first, and then we'll see what happens before you start doing anything else with the mounts. So JPAX 2022 Tundra, worth the wait. I hope so, because I'm waiting. So the only thing that people complain or didn't complain, I hear people complain, I hear people very happy with the old Tundra. It's too old. It's time. It's been a long time with the same thing over and over and over. People like new things. I like new things, but I also like old things, because old things are predictable. You know what they are, and that's how they are. The only thing I really wish, and this is me personally, not consumer advice, I wish they would improve 3 things with the Tundra that would make me happy camper. They could improve the ride a little bit, especially when the Tundra came out in 07, things were great. But today, trucks have come a long way. They could improve the ride. I'm not really interested in towing capacity, how the frame fluxes and all this mess. That's just Ford and Chevy talking, not real world talking. But the other thing I wish they would improve is a little bit of tech and feature for that price. Just a little bit. It would be nice. And seriously, better gas mileage would be really nice, although it's not the top priority. It's not going to be, all of a sudden the Tundra gets 50 miles per gallon. That's not going to be the case. But closer to the 20s is nice. Maybe mid-20s on the highway is nice. But again, it's a truck. It's never going to get a very impressive and crazy gas mileage like some of the other models. So Irvin, would you recommend a RAV4 hybrid or wait for the inevitable 4Runner hybrid? I don't think I would wait for a 4Runner hybrid, because that's going to be a while. We're talking 2 years from now, potentially, if that. I hope Toyota wises up till then and doesn't change it for 1 more year if they can. I do not know that I'm trying to remember if the engine emission thing might run out and then they can't really use that engine anymore, and then they're forced to do it. But I would consider a RAV4 hybrid, because honestly, I had a RAV4 hybrid the other day. Actually, it was not a hybrid, but RAV4 hybrids are nice. They've had a lot of features. They have a lot of stuff. And then here's the other thing. You can buy one instead of waiting all this time. Buy one, traded in at that time. They hold their value very well, and perhaps now is not the best time to buy a car if you don't have to, but that's up to you. But I wouldn't wait for a model that's not even announced. You don't know if they're going to make it. If you're going to wait for a Tundra hybrid, yes, because that's coming up very soon here. But RAV4 hybrid, 4Runner hybrid, we don't even know if that's going to be a thing. So, Kalu Nat, how do I make an appointment with you to get my vehicle repaired by an excellent mechanic? Thank you. Thank you very much for saying that. So, send me an email, and I know the emails have gone out of hand, and I do apologize for that, but my family comes first, and my obligations to them come first, so I am doing what I can with the emails, still trying to keep up with the comments. If you have a question, leave a comment. But as far as you wanting service, send me an email with capital letters, Chicago service request. That's the only way that catches, actually, Mrs. Carcarenot is checking those now because I don't even have time to look at that. And she flags that email, puts it to the side, prints it out, and then I get to see it so I can actually respond to you if you need service. Because I am looking to use some of these side work jobs as content for use, for education, for DIY stuff, because a lot of people request that. So yes, send me an email, write Chicago service request, capital letters, so she can see it, and then we can keep going. So Ryan Morris, do keyless starts fall frequently? Fail frequently, I'm guessing. If so, do you have to replace the keys as well? So keyless starts, they don't really have many issues. The batteries, that's the one thing that kills those, or not kills them, that make them stop working or not work right. But they don't fail normally unless you dunk them in water, of course, or drop them, or really not mishandle the key itself. But they're very reliable. They don't just fail for no reason. I wouldn't worry about it failing, just the batteries. If you really don't ever have a problem with the key battery, just replace it every year. Life is good. And Toyota does have one of the keys that lasts the longest. I've had some other models, other manufacturers. The smart key every 2 months needs a battery. That's just the way it is. So Toyota is pretty good when they go a year or two, sometimes even more. So guys, we're reaching the end of the time I can do the live stream, but let's do this. I'll take 3 questions in random order, and the first question will be the next one after the one I just answered, because to keep this fair, this is feedback from all of you about the live stream, so I'll try to keep things fair. So N6 Yun, when I lock my car, it makes a beep sound. I have a non-smart key. How do I change that sound so I don't think the car is being unlocked by the neighbor's Sorry, the question jumped. Let me just find it again. Oh, here we go. So I don't think it's being unlocked by the neighbor's 6 cars on my street. I'm trying to... You want the car to beep when you lock it. Most of them do, some of them don't. You can add something aftermarket so you would know, but as far as if it's a car that does have that and it's not doing it, that unfortunately needs diagnosis. And you didn't list the model of the car, so that really helps me. Folks, for the future, always put the model, year, model, even make, if we're talking Lexus or Toyota, although that's pretty common from the model, but put mileage as well, because that really helps me give you a better answer. Because, like, I'll give you an example: 2004, 2006 Corolla, actually 2003 to 2008 Corolla, sorry, does not have a beep from the factory, but later ones do. So that's where this becomes kind of... I visualize these cars when I give you an answer. I work with them every day. I know them, but if I don't know which one, it gets really hard to answer. So leave a comment after the live stream or any of my videos with more information on this, and I'll get back to you. All right, I'm going to scroll down. So Lexus man, I'd love for you to do a video on the 2JZ. I love 2JZs, but they're really hard to find. Hey, if anybody's watching and you own a Lexus or a Supra with a 2JZ, you want some work done, come on over. We'll make a video about it, and I love those. They're super easy to work on. especially in stock form. And we'd love to make a video on it, but they're harder and harder to come by. So let's take a couple more questions. So Nancy Mattern, this is a good question, and this has come up before. I am buying a 2021 RAV4 Prime from an out-of-state dealer because my state of Ohio will not be allotted any primes. Will my local dealer be skilled in servicing my new car? Nancy, they should be. For everything else, there is no specific requirement, and this doesn't make sense for me, but that's Toyota's decision. They did require dealerships to do special training and specific guys on the Prius Prime, which is half as much as complicated as the RAV4 Prime. But for the RAV4 Prime, they did not do that. They just said everybody should take the training and everybody should work on them. So there's that for this one. I'm guessing dealerships will have a hard time working on them when they have big problems. But knowing Toyota and knowing that you just bought this thing, you are buying it, but you're going to buy it and you're going to take care of it, you're likely not going to have a lot of problems. The maintenance, everything's good. Any minor repairs were good, but when things get serious 15 years from now, 250,000 miles, that's when the dealership might be scratching their head. But then again, times will change. Toyota does want to make the RAV4 Prime available everywhere, but it's just rolling out in small, especially now. I mean, in Chicago, it went like, okay, they're going to be there in September, then October, then 2021 came about, and yeah, they're not going to come anytime soon. Just keep waiting. And we got only one, not through service. We've seen a few, but just one for sale of the dealership, and that was it. So even the places where it's available, it's not really as available. And which brings me to one thing I wanted to share with you all. Be careful from dealerships. You're driving from out of state. You're in Ohio. You're driving out of state. Make sure that dealership actually has the car. Dealerships, shameful ones, here's what they're doing. Toyota allocates cars to dealerships. I just give you this so you know how this works. Toyota allocates cars before they are made to dealerships. So, okay, in this window of time, you're going to get ABC car, whatever options, this and that. Here's what dealerships are doing these days because of the shortage. As soon as they're allocated the car, now this car is still a big roll of steel. They haven't even started making it. They'll put it on their website. Horrible, horrible practice. Because then you see that car, oh, they have it, let's go running to the dealership. You go, oh, sorry, we're going to get it, hopefully, maybe 4 months. But in the meantime, you want to buy this car that nobody else wants to buy because it has a problem or it's overpriced. That's what dealerships are doing, and that's horrible. Not all of them. But if you see a dealership like that, be very careful. If all of a sudden you see one dealership that has four new cars in stock, the dealership where I work at, actually, and then the dealership 50 miles away has 100 cars. It's like, that's interesting, because I happen to drive by that other dealership, and they also have 4 cars on the lot. How come they have all these cars on their website? Because they don't. They're not allocated these cars. They're allocated these cars, but they might get them over a 6-month period. Be careful when you shop for cars online, especially with dealerships, new cars. Call them. Are you looking at this car? And if I go right now, I will be sitting in this car, right? And if they lie in your face like that, I wouldn't do business with this dealership, because that's horrible. They just want people to come through the door because they're trying to make something happen because they have no cars to sell. It's kind of a weird problem, but that's how this is going. So thought I'd give you a heads up on that one. So folks, we'll take the last question. And as the typical fashion of my channel, I will take the last question, because the last is always first. And it looks like Robin, thank you for doing this today. Hello from your neighbor from the great white north. From your experience, how reliable is the 2IR FE engines? They are reliable if you take care of them. if they have a notorious thing to do where they burn oil if you don't take care of them. And I know somebody will jump and say, oh, it's not the same as the 2AZ, the one before it. But yes, we've seen so many of those. Actually, I've seen a couple last week blow up because they ran out of oil. If you take care of these engines, they don't burn oil. They don't have a production problem. If you don't take care of them and you go that 10, 15,000 mile dream oil change, you're going to have oil consumption. It's just, there's no way around it. So I'll let you know that, but it's otherwise a very good engine. Worst case scenario, water pump. Really worst case scenario, they leak from the front timing cover. Both are not big deals. Very simple to repair in the car, and life is good. Folks, thank you so much for watching the live stream. I really appreciate you joining in. And again, I still can't believe we have 100,000 subscribers. I am waiting for something to happen. I won't tell you. I'll leave you hanging. And then you'll see a video to celebrate that 100,000 miles. That we're Toyota, 100,000 miles is not a big milestone anymore because 300,000 miles is becoming the norm. But we will celebrate that 100,000 subscriber mark with you guys. And thank you again so much for being one of them. Guys, until the next live stream, which, by the way, I am trying to keep it consistent here. We're trying to go for either Saturday or Sunday. I might actually make it an alternating because sometimes I film on Saturday, and that's when this becomes difficult. But I am planning to have a live stream next Saturday or Sunday at 7 p.m. Keep your notifications open so you can see it when I put the video out, when I schedule the video up, and you'll see it either Saturday or Sunday at 7 p.m. Folks, until the next live stream, before we close it, make sure you follow me on Instagram. I'm becoming a lot more active on Instagram. I'll show you sneak peeks, stuff from the dealership that might not make it to a video, but follow me on Instagram at the Car Care Nut sorry, that's my email, at the Car Care Nut. And thank you so much for watching the live stream, folks. And until the next live stream, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and you have a wonderful day.